It's back. Welcome to the Summer Knockout Tournament 2024. Yes, welcome along to this week's Women's Football Chat on the day of the preliminary round draw of this year's Summer Knockout Tournament. But before we get into that, we have got plenty more to talk about on this week's show. My name is Chris Gadsby. I'm here every Thursday at 6 p.m. bringing you the very latest from the third and fourth tiers of women's football here in England. That's the FA Women's National League. So we have got a fantastic interview coming up later on in the show, plus that draw for the preliminary round of the Summer Knockout Tournament. But first, a couple of bits of news to bring you. We're going to start with the positive news, which is that Sarah Jackson of Leafield Athletic has been awarded Manager of the Month for April/May in Tier 4. You'll remember that last week we announced the Tier 3 Manager of the Month winner, but Tier 4 didn't come out until after the show was recorded. Two crucial wins for Leafield Athletic at the start of the month lifted them out of the relegation zone. They held on to that spot and survived in Division 1 Midlands. So congratulations to Sarah Jackson. Then we move into the slightly less good news, which was a club statement that came out from Bridgwater United. And it reads as followed. As a women's team playing in the fourth tier of the football pyramid, we felt compelled to write this in order to inform all our stakeholders of the recent goings on at our club. At the end of February 2024, the three directors of Tony McCarthy, Mike Kushner and Adam Murray, who co-owned Bridgwater United Women, decided to move the club in a different direction. With Adam Murray stepping down, he pursued further interests in the men's club along with other assets, including the Bridgwater Community Sports Trust, the Fairfax Park Stadium and the acquired land at Bristol Road. A sale was made of these remaining assets to a new owner, and at the time of the official cessation details, which were filed on Companies House in March, it then became apparent to the directors of Tony and Mike at Bridgwater United Women that many aspects of the sale were not accurate and were in fact misleading. Effectively, and as a result of this, Bridgwater United Women's FC were then made homeless with no pitch to play on, with the removal of all agreed access to Fairfax Park and with a third of all home matches still left to play that season. With the support of the FA, along with the support of a local National League club and access to our educational partners' facilities, the remaining fixtures were fulfilled, resulting in a respectable mid-table league position in the National League. As a club, we're extremely proud of the way we have acted, both professionally and operationally, together with how we responded to these challenges, which has had an effect on all concerned. As we look forward with positivity to the forthcoming 24-25 season, we have made huge strides with our short-term, medium-term and long-term plans. The strength we have acquired and in these adverse moments will stand us in good stead as we move forwards, where we hope the local community will get behind us with their support. Our main focus now is on securing our own stadium and pitch. This means we can stand alone and showcase our desire to be a high-achieving club which does not rely on the support or influence of a men's club. Football should be accessible for all. We strive to continue to give opportunities to young females in this amazing sport, whether as a player, a coach, a volunteer and more. Shortly, we aim to announce some of our more recent developments and appreciate everyone for their continued support to a stand-alone women's football club. Hashtag football for all. So it sounds like there's big changes coming at Bridgwater United. Now, interestingly as well with this, that club statement got put on the Bridgwater United website. That then got taken down without club approval, which is why Bridgwater United then posted it straight onto their social media pages. So it sounds again, which is extremely frustrating, that much like Rail Bedford a couple of weeks ago, you'll remember we reported on that, are being really hampered and set back by people that don't have the club's interest at heart. It sounds very similar to that situation for Bridgwater United, which is really frustrating, particularly, club with the same name. And, Rail Bedford is being influenced by people outside of the club umbrella. Bridgwater United seems to have been influenced and set back by people within the club umbrella, which is in many respects even worse. But hopefully they can sort out a home and a pitch for the start of next season, even if they sort out with the league playing the first couple of weeks away from home or somewhere like that. But it may be one of those things where a blessing in disguise is probably the wrong context, but we need more independent and individual women's football clubs that aren't just relying on being linked to the men's side. Now, there is an element where that comes in. You look at Tier 3, Forest linked. There are various other teams linked into the men's side where it's a positive thing for the club. It's helping the club move forward. They've got ambitions of being Super League Championship. But then there is the other side of being linked with a men's club where if you're down in the lower divisions and you haven't got, with the greatest of respect to Bridgwater, haven't got ambitions, particularly in the short or medium term, of being in the Super League, where those ideas, and if everyone's not on the same page, it actually ends up really hurting the club. And then sometimes if you can go independent, that might end up being the better way to go. We saw a long time ago now when Cardiff City Ladies broke away, were independent, joined in, broke away again, and how much they've been able to do over in Wales. So it might end up that it is almost a good thing for Bridgwater United, even though it doesn't seem like it right now. Hopefully there are a lot of people in that area that the club can go to for support and help, and people that are willing to give their time and help the club move past this point. And hopefully they will have another strong season next season. As they said, they finished in the mid-table of Division 1 Southwest, finished in 6th, top half. Very respectable finish for Bridgwater United this season, and hopefully they can continue to move forward. That's the hope really for Bridgwater United. Time now then to introduce to you this week's guest. Now, this was a fascinating conversation I had last night with Morgan Bailey, who is a consultant orthopaedic surgeon with a particular passion for kids and young adult knee surgery. So an ideal person to talk to me about ACLs. Now, I first contacted Morgan when all the stuff came out with Kaylee McDonald and her ACL, and having to crowdfund that in order to come out and be able to afford the surgery for that. Unfortunately, the message went into Morgan's junk, so we've been slightly delayed in getting this conversation going. However, it is a fascinating conversation, and Morgan is also an ambassador for the charity Power Up to Play, which is a charity set up by medical professionals to help improve young player welfare in grassroots sport through prevention of serious knee injuries. So essentially, Power Up to Play, a great charity that is focused on trying to prevent ACL injuries in grassroots football, essentially in leagues like the FAWNL. So it is a really interesting conversation. They are always looking to work with more coaches, players, teams all across the country. So do send this show over to your team managers, your coaches, any players that you think might be interested in it, because there are some really great pieces of information about how the women's game is progressing in terms of new boots to help lower the injuries in that sense, and how a different style of warm-up can have a really big, significant impact on preventing ACL injuries. But just for complete clarification at the start of the interview, because we're not all medical professionals, I asked Morgan, firstly, what does ACL stand for? Secondly, what is an ACL? And where is the ACL in your body?
So ACL stands for anterior cruciate ligament. So in your knee, you've got the things that stabilize the knee on the outside, and then inside you have this cruciate, so cross of two ligaments, the ACL and the PCL. And the ACL gives you front to back stability and also a bit of rotational stability in your knee joint. So to answer number three, it's in the knee.
So it's connecting various bits together. Did it help like the knee like flex and
It
support,
helps
because the knee's got to
you.
support your whole body, hasn't it, as well?
Yeah, it's mainly so you can function without an ACL because there's lots of other things that make up your knee joint. What you struggle most with without an ACL is pivoting, so planting foot and changing direction, which is why it's such an issue in cutting sports like football, netball, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it seems to be more prominent in women's side of the sport than men.
So we have actually known that women are higher risk of ACL injuries for over 20 years. This has been documented in the literature. I think I recently did a bit of a literature search, and the earliest paper I found was from 1992.
Mm.
So it's not actually it's not a new phenomenon. We've always known that women are higher risk.
So why are women higher risk?
So I like to divide this into sex-based reasons and gender-based reasons, because the reality is it's multifactorial, and we don't know exactly what the main cause is.
Yeah.
But looking at all the evidence we have, there are elements that relate to being born female genetically, physiologically, biomechanically. And then there are elements relating to being a woman in society with the lack of resources in women's sports and the way that society behaves around research into women and resources for women's strength and things like that. So your sort of sex-based reasons are things, there are anatomical factors. Women are more likely to be have generalized laxity. They're more likely to be a bit knock-kneed, and that can put you at risk. And they're more likely to have what we call a narrow femoral notch. So their anatomy of the bones can predispose them. Not all women have all of these things. They're just more likely to have these things that we know are pose a risk of ACL rupture. And then you've got the hormonal influence that we don't fully understand yet, but we know that women are more likely to rupture their ACL during the pre-ovulatory phase of their menstrual cycle, so when there's a huge surge in estrogen. Beyond that, we don't know a lot more of the detail. There's still a lot of work to be done. And then when you look at the sort of more gender-based or environmental reasons, we've got things you see in the media that pitch quality can impact on risk of injury, and women are more likely to play on the poorer quality pitches, or more likely to have to change which type of pitch they're playing on from training session to training session. So, Astro to 3G or whatever, and then, changing boots between. And then boots themselves, we know, have been designed for men and not really taken into account female landing patterns. And then the biggest thing that we see is the neuromuscular control of the knee, so the way the muscles are firing and the strength and conditioning side of things. And I sort of think on the one hand that's a biological, a sort of sex-based reason, but actually, if you really pin down on it and look at strength and conditioning resources for women, they're just not as good as they are for men. We don't, as a society, encourage young girls to do strength work or to be strong or to want to be strong. And if you look at academy football, is a really good example of the discrepancy. In academy football, young boys will start their strength and conditioning at the age of around 9, whereas young girls will start at the age of about 12 if they're lucky. And the amount of resources as part of the strength and conditioning team there's a huge difference. And then you also take into account that girls become skeletally mature, so finish growing 2 years earlier than boys do, and yet the strength work is starting later.
Right, yeah.
So for me, that's a sort of selection of contributing factors.
Yeah, there's a real selection, as you say. I mean, I remember when England women won the European Championships a couple of years ago. There was a big thing because that was the first time that they'd had like custom sports bras. And you mentioned there about the boots as well being designed for men. So how kind of different do the boots need to be? Because I remember growing up, and I think I read it as well, that they thought that because of the way the load came in, as women developed generally wider hips through puberty, the angle coming down through the knees was sharper than for the men.
Yeah. So that's exactly, and that's, we call that the sort of the Q angle, and that's sort of what I mean when I talk about being a bit more knock-kneed. There is a spectrum, but women are more likely to have this higher Q angle. And the boots just haven't, women just wear boots that have been designed for men and men's bodies and men's weights and men's shapes. And actually, I think we're now starting to see some people bring out some women specific boots. But I think there are many elements of society where everything has been designed around a 70-kilo white man. And this is just an example of how that's not quite good enough.
Yeah, and we had the obviously with women's football being banned for so long, it was effectively starting from scratch, wasn't it? And we're only just starting to get where we should have been a long time ago.
Yeah. And it's really interesting with the boots as well. Like people love to talk about the boots and the pictures and things because there are kind of, companies can advertise their boots, their new women specific boots. But I think the really interesting thing is going back to the strength and conditioning work. The injury prevention warm-ups are probably the thing that can have the biggest impact on stopping the injuries. So if you're gonna invest in something that's going to have the biggest impact on reducing ACL injuries in women, it's the injury prevention warm-ups.
Right, yeah.
In our grassroots. So I work with a charity called Power Up to Play, and it was designed. The charity started in response to the rise in teenage ACL injuries. Part of that relates to the rise in women because more young girls are playing. And actually, I've sort of extrapolated that. So I work promoting the injury prevention warm up in kids and teenagers, but I also will promote it in all my female patients. There's no evidence for most things in women's ACL injuries. The only thing we have is we know they're more common in women, and we know that neuromuscular injury prevention warm ups work. So it's like this massive win.
Yeah, and it's from what I've seen as well. It's such a big operation, such a long recovery time to sort them as well. Because particularly, we're talking in the amateur game here in the FA Women's National League. You can have to be off work for a long period of time, and it affects not just on the pitch. These aren't players earning thousands of pounds a week. They're having to go to work in the week, and then they can't do that either. And it's such a important thing to try and help prevent.
Absolutely. It's a devastating injury to have. If you're working and it has you out of work, if you're a kid, teenagers, it has them out of sport for a year. And then you've got, our patients all going to want to go back to sport after a year, particularly young women who, the motivation to go back to sport isn't always there if the support's not there. And then the other thing is that the ACL injuries, there's a really high risk of developing arthritis 15 years later. So you've got all these young women who are going to have early arthritis.
Yeah, which is another kind of devastating blow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I saw bring back on something you mentioned earlier about how the risk is increased at certain stages during the menstrual cycle. So presumably that's where we're getting now, and you're seeing it at the top of the game, where tracking the cycles and doing less intense training during the more high risk areas is so important that we just don't have at this amateur level.
Yeah, I think people are trying to get a better handle on it. I don't think we fully understand it all yet. There was some work done where they tried to give athletes the oral contraceptive pill to just standardize their estrogen levels, and didn't actually reduce the injury risks. So I think being aware of cycles, tracking and getting information is really helpful. And certainly, like I know Jessica Ellis Hill brought out an app that helps you track and
Mm.
work out whether you should be doing more strength or speed or whatever at different points in your cycle. And I think that is accessible to your kind of grassroots and amateur level. But certainly the resources available for the elite, yeah, they're not available in the same way. You've not got the sort of sports medics and people tracking everything at that level.
Yeah. So we've got now, the work is going into the boots. The national team have had these custom sports bras and everything. Some clubs are changing their short colours away from white to give the players more confidence there. What do you think is the next kind of step forward to help lessen the risk of these injuries and just kind of help empower the game to keep growing?
So for me, it's twofold. One is do what we know works to begin with. So as I say, the only thing we know works is neuromuscular warm up. So the PEP warm up is a really good one for football. And all my patients who play sports, I always make sure before they return to play, they've got to have an injury prevention warm up lined up before they go back. Getting big investors into the charity, the Power Ups Play charity, to try and get that standardized across the country. Because if we can standardize that, not just in your amateur leagues, but if you can get that into your schools, your grassroots clubs, then it will filter into the leagues.
Mm.
And it just needs to become a default that everyone does these neuromuscular warm-ups before they play. That would be the biggest win right now. So that's on the one side. And then on the other side, I sit on a women's ACL steering group where we're currently trying to identify research priorities from an orthopaedic perspective, from a surgical perspective, so that we can just increase the body of evidence as to what we do to prevent them, to treat them, to manage them. And then I know that there's a couple of organisations. We've got the FIFPro ACL project. They're running, looking into sort of women's football ACLs and doing a lot of work there. So we've got a few different groups putting some work in to get some evidence, because we don't have all the answers at the moment. In fact, we have very few answers. So part of this is just getting a bit more information, getting some high quality evidence, having some women's voices behind the research. That's a big thing as well. It's a lot of men researching men's health. So we need some more kind of research into women's health, and working collaboratively across specialties between your surgeons, your sports medics, your physios, patients, bringing everyone together rather than all working individually. But as I say, while we're collecting that information, it's all about the warm-ups, I think.
Yeah. And as I say, just finally, because it's fascinating all this, and I could talk to you all night, but I know you're on call as well, is that they obviously all need setting up properly, but what is kind of different in these specific PEP warm-ups to what you might do normally?
So I think my experience from talking to people about, when I ask people what warm-ups they're doing, they'll often say they go for a run and they do some stretching. People love to stretch, women, and I would argue that actually men are probably much more in need of stretching, because women are often a bit more stretchy to begin with. And then, so the PEP warm up has these categories. So you start with your running warm up, and then you have a strength section. And then you have a plyometric session. So the sort of bouncy landing control, jumping. And then after that, you have some agility work, changing direction, replicating movements you're going to do in play. And then you have your stretching. And the PEP warm up takes about 10 minutes. It's so easy. And our job with the charity is to go around and sort of empower coaches to then do it as a routine with their teams. But it's ridiculously easy, and you can expand on it. There's things like FIFA 11. There are various established neuromuscular warm-ups out there that are more involved. And if you want to do more, that's great. But at a very, very basic level, this 10-minute warm-up, hitting all of those different categories, focusing on keeping your knee over your ankle, keeping your core strong, has huge impact on reducing if you look at the papers for the PEP warm-up, the biggest reduction in ACL injuries is in teenage girls, and generally bigger in women than in men. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just finally, before I let you go, we've got players and coaches that will be watching and listening to this show. So just give a bit of a plug to that charity you're with again, and we can get some traffic to that.
That'd be amazing. So we've got a website, Power Up to Play, and we would welcome any coaches, players, anyone getting in touch through the website. We have 80 ambassadors across the country now. It's it's clinicians, so orthopedic surgeons, physios, and the people who run it, the trustees. They've got that central email account, and they will find your local ambassadors who are really happy to work with the clubs and help support coaches. We also have an Instagram account, Power Up to Play, and I run that, and very happy for people to send DMs on that so that we can connect you and give you the support you need.
Oh, Morgan, thank you so much. So I'll put the link to that website and the Instagram account down in the description of this episode of the Women's Football Chat. I'll link to it off the website, www.womensfootballchat.wordpress.com as well. Morgan, it's been fantastic to speak to you. It's a fascinating subject, and one that is developing all the time.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Well, yes, a huge thank you to Morgan for taking time out to talk to me last night. She was on call as well, so we were. I didn't want to hold her too long, just in case that phone went off and she had to go in. But all of the social media and website links to Power Up to Play are down in the description. So do make sure you go and check the charity out, because it could have a real big impact on not just your team, but the welfare of the players in it in years to come. So really important, and if we can just prevent any number of ACL injuries, then that can only be a good thing. Huge thank you to Morgan for taking time out to speak to me yesterday, and I really hope you did enjoy that interview. Right then, time now then for the preliminary round draw of the 2024 Women's Football Chat Summer Knockout Tournament. All 72 FAWNL teams are in the pot. Only 16 will be drawn today. Chesham United, the inaugural winners, Wolverhampton Wanderers, are defending their crown after they won it last year. Will your favourite team be drawn out in the preliminary round? And if they are, will you be able to get them through into the first round proper, which will be drawn next week? Let's head over to the draw room and see what the opening 8 ties are. Yes, welcome along to the preliminary round draw for the Women's Football Chat Summer Knockout Tournament 2024. The third instalment of this competition now, where throughout the summer we pit clubs against each other on social media and we find out who your favourite club in the FAWNL is. Chesham United were the inaugural winners back in 2022, and after losing in that semi-final in the first year, Wolverhampton Wanderers went a couple of steps better last year and are the current defending champions. So how it works is, over the next 6 weeks or so, we whittle the 72 FAWNL clubs down to just 2, and you then vote for your favourite, and they will be crowned the 2024 champions. Now, before we get into this preliminary draw, just remind ourselves of how this knockout works. All 72 teams take part in the Women's Football Chat Summer Knockout, and unlike on the pitch action, there is no regionalisation. Anyone can face anybody else. In the preliminary round, we draw 8 ties to get 72 teams down to 64, and then all 64 teams are drawn out in round 1, going down to 32, 16, 8, 4, and then the final. And all votes will take place over on womensfootballchat.wordpress.com. Winners of each tie will be decided by a public vote, spread over 3 days from the launch of the Women's Football Chat on the Thursday through to midnight on that Sunday. In the event of both sides getting exactly the same number of votes, a special one-day tie-breaking vote will take place across the Monday to determine the round winner, with the winner going through into the subsequent round of the Summer Knockout Tournament. Those then are the rules for the Summer Knockout Tournament. Very straightforward. Teams get drawn out. You vote for your favourite. So today, this is the preliminary round tie. All 72 teams are in the box, but only 16 of them will be drawn out today. Well, before we get this draw underway then, let's just have a look at some of the ball numbers you need to be looking out for in this preliminary round draw. Of course, no guarantee that any side will get drawn out this week. New teams into the FAWNL. Barnsley are ball number 8, Bournemouth Sports number 12, Bristol Rovers number 14, Cheadletown Stingers are number 18, Dulwich Hamlet are number 24, Lincoln United 38, Real Bedford 57 and Worcester City are ball number 70. Two teams coming down from the Championship into the FAWNL. Lewis are ball number 36 and Watford are ball number 67. The defending champions Wolverhampton Wanderers number 69. Let's then crack straight on with the preliminary round draw for the Summer Knockout 2024. 16 teams are going to be drawn today and they will go into the 8 preliminary round ties. The home teams, there is no specific home and away in the Summer Knockout with it all being online, but they will be drawn first. And the first ball out in 2024 is a newly promoted side. It's ball number 70. That is Worcester City. Worcester City, the first team out of the hat in the Summer Knockout 2024. And Worcester City will take on West Bromwich Albion. West Bromwich Albion against Worcester City in the preliminary round of the draw this year. Second tie out, number 47, Norton and Stockton Ancients. Norton and Stockton Ancients, number 47, the next team out of the hat. And they will face number 63, that's Stoke City. Stoke City, number 63, will take on Norton and Stockton Ancients. Number 48, Northampton Town. Northampton Town, number 48, the next team out. Number 2, AFC Fylde. AFC Fylde against Northampton Town, the third tie in this preliminary round. Number 56, Queen's Park Rangers. Queen's Park Rangers, number 56. And they will take on number 3, AFC Sudbury. AFC Sudbury against Queen's Park Rangers, a Division 1 South East clash between those two sides. Next out, number 50, Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest will play a preliminary round tie for the second year in a row. And they were knocked out in the preliminary round last year. And Nottingham Forest this year will take on a newly promoted side in Lincoln United. Lincoln United, East Midlands clash for those two sides. Nottingham Forest against Lincoln United. Number 24, another newly promoted side, Dulwich Hamlet. Dulwich Hamlet get a preliminary round tie in the 2024 Summer Knockouts. The scenes from when they got promoted are ominous, to say the least, for whoever comes up against them. The fan base very active. And taking on Dulwich Hamlet is number 34. That's Leafield Athletic. Leafield Athletic against Dulwich Hamlet. Leafield, though, another side who do like to get involved in the summer knockout tournament. It could be a great opening round tie there. Two ties left to be drawn, and number 35 is Leeds United. 35 Leeds United, next team out of the pot. And Leeds United will take on number 46. That's Moneyfields. Moneyfields, the next team out. And we now have just one tie left to go. So Leeds United against Moneyfields in the preliminary round. And number 18 is yet another newly promoted side, Cheadletown Stingers. Cheadletown Stingers, the penultimate side out of the hat in this opening preliminary round. And to round off this preliminary round, Cheadletown Stingers will take on number 16, that is Cambridge United. Cambridge United against Cheadletown Stingers rounds off the preliminary round for this year. We will then run through those 8 ties again for you. We are starting with Worcester City against West Bromwich Albion. Norton and Stockton Ancients will take on Stoke City. Northampton Town face AFC Fylde. QPR will go against AFC Sudbury. Nottingham Forest take on Lincoln United. Dulwich Hamlet face Leafield Athletic. Leeds United, they will go up against Moneyfields, and Cheadletown Stingers will go against Cambridge United. So these draws will go up onto www.womensfootballchat.wordpress.com first thing on Friday morning, and they will run through then until the midnight on Sunday, when we will have the 8 teams eliminated, 8 teams through into the first round, and then next week all 64 teams will be drawn for the round 1 of the Summer Knockout 2024. Well, there we are then, the preliminary round draw. Newly promoted sides, Worcester City, Lincoln United, Dulwich Hamlet, Cheadletown Stingers, 4 of the 8 sides coming up into the FAWNL drawn out in that preliminary round, and there are some big names in there as well. Moneyfields always do quite well. Lincoln United have a great opportunity to knock out Nottingham Forest in the preliminary round for the 2nd year running. Forest tend to struggle a little bit in the summer knockout, but those polls up on womensfootballchat.wordpress.com. They will close at midnight on Sunday. You need to make sure you get your votes in nice and early, because if you leave it too long, it might end up being a little bit too much of a comeback that your team needs to make. So if you want them through into that big 64 team first round draw next week, make sure you go on to womensfootballchat.wordpress.com and cast your vote. That will about do it for this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. A big thank you once again to Morgan. I think that is, in my view, probably one of the best interviews I've done on this show in the last 137 episodes. Really feel like it could make a big difference to many of the teams and players around the FAWNL. So please do share it. And of course, if you like the show, then if you hit the subscribe button, you can turn notifications on as well. You'll never miss this show when it goes live every Thursday at 6 p.m. And on social media, you want to go on X, it's at WFootballChat. All the latest information about the FAWNL up there as well. Thank you very much for watching and or listening to this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat, and goodbye.